Hi there, I'm Scott Lowe with ActualTech Media. I'm here today with Manoj Nair, who is the Chief Product Officer for Hypergrid. Manoj, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to talk to you.
So as we look at what's happened in the market today, a lot of things have changed. So can you tell us a little bit about Hypergrid, which to some people is still a new company, and what's been happening since you launched the company last year?
Sure. We launched the company in July last year, and it was a combination of a couple of companies that came together, good assets in the software-defined space, some really good IP in the cloud management, container management space. And what we have been able to do is we first launched a infrastructure as a service company in terms of a business model. So hyperconverged infrastructure as a service was our first offering. Our whole goal, if you think about what Hypergrid is trying to do, we're trying to make IT into a utility model. So our belief is IT needs to be consumed, not built. And so the first thing was offer a consumption model for what people are familiar with, which is the hyperconverged infrastructure. Since then, it's been a busy year. We've had new partners signed up, new customers signing up, and we also launched a new platform called HyperCloud towards the end of the year at the Gartner Data Center Conference and right around that time. And this becomes our base platform for all the services now that we are making available from Hypergrid.
So it started out as a hyperconverged platform, and that's sort of a phrase we hear a lot in the market, right? And it's sort of evolved into a cloud services platform.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, go a little deeper?
Sure. So in my belief, hyperconverged was a great proving ground for the software-defined infrastructure, and people started using that initially, storage and compute together. No networking in there, but people started seeing the value, and the value that resonated with customers was simplicity of how this whole solution could be managed. If you look at the other disruption that was happening in IT was people trying to build new applications, people trying to say, hey, why am I able to do so-and-so in Amazon, AWS, when my IT department cannot? And so while there's simplicity and cost savings in hyperconverged, it's still an infrastructure solution. It doesn't give you an answer for this application capabilities that developers need if you're trying to innovate and all of that. So that's the gap that we saw is, one, it needs to be a consumption model. It needs to have the simplicity of what hyperconverged has proven out in the market, but it needs to give application services and that end-to-end stack. And so that's what we went about trying to build at Hypergrid. We created a platform that, if you think about it in simple terms, it combines infrastructure service, platform as a service, and the app services that developers need when they're trying to do DevOps and CI/CD, and support any kind of application. So that's the other issue with just hyperconverged is essentially virtual machines, which yes, there's a lot of applications that are virtualized, but they're bare metal applications, SQL Server, databases that you want to run bare metal. Containers now, running a container on top of a VM is like driving a car on top of another car or something like that, right? So we said no, containers need to be running right on the infrastructure itself, and that's what any application and all the layers that you would get from public cloud in a consumption model. So pay as you go, you never buy CapEx, you're only paying for the service.
So that's the other piece of this, of hyperconverged. You talked a little about HyperCloud as well, but can you give us sort of the really quick 10,000 foot, 30,000 foot overview of what HyperCloud actually brings to your customers?
Sure. HyperCloud is allowing different customers to solve different problems. So we're focused on 4 or 5 use cases. An example use case is one of our Fortune 500 customers is using it for unified cloud management. So using unified cloud management as a service, they are already an Azure customer. Some departments use AWS. Some departments are using vRealize and other clouds. We are able to consolidate all of this into one self-service cloud that has governance, that has controls and security. There's another customer, a large bank, who's just trying to do, they're not going to go to the public cloud, but they want that kind of public cloud, VM infrastructure as a service use case. On some of the other use cases that have resonated and we've had large customers deploy is a large retailer who's using SQL a lot. They're trying to figure out how to go from one end-of-life version of SQL to SQL 16 without, the core count explosion, and how do I optimize all that? When we come there and give SQL as a service, they pay for us just like they pay for SQL Server based on the number of cores they're using and storage. And so we've been able to optimize these different use cases, whether it's VDI, so doing traditional VDI, we're saying we'll give you desktop as a service on premises. So these are 4 or 5 use cases that they use to get into the HyperCloud platform. Once they're in the platform, they get all the benefits of the platform, whether it's developer use cases for building new apps, control, governance, or just simplifying how they manage their infrastructure.
And what are recap the ways that people can actually get HyperCloud?
So they buy use cases. They will buy a desktop as a service or VDI use case, in which case if you're buying VDI as a service, all you're getting is infrastructure, but it's optimized for VDI and with partnerships with VDI providers. Or they can get a desktop as a service offering where we've partnered with the company WorkSpot and created a joint single solution where the customer gets a single full end-to-end offering on desktop as a service. SQL as a service. Again, SQL Server, lots of deployments out there. We given you can enter in there and start deploying SQL. We have unified cloud management that I talked about. And then there's the DevOps use case around people who are just trying to build these new applications, whether it's using containers or they've done some scripting on their own, they're trying to do their own automation. We go in there and give them a platform where this true DevOps can happen in a simple way.
And speaking of DevOps, so what are some of the things that DevOps practitioners are able to do with the Hypergrid or HyperCloud platform that they may not be able to do with the traditional infrastructure?
My definition of DevOps is DevOps needs to really allow the development team to work closely with their operations team. And part of working closely is the same set of tools, same procedures, same tools. You work together from the design phase all the way to delivery. There's no building code, tossing it over to the operations side. Advantage of that is agility and all of those benefits that people are trying to quickly iterate, get new apps out. What HyperCloud does is provide a single platform. So the developers are able to get a platform where they bring their app. They can just point us to their application, Java app, .NET app, Python. It's in some GitHub, some repository. We take that app and we're able to deploy it in an environment that has been pre-provisioned for them. So IT can do governance, control, all these things. They don't know what's happening, where it is. They just see, okay, I've got 4 choices. I can see the cost here, I can see the security here, very simple. At the same time, once they've gone through their quick iteration, they're able to hand it over to the IT ops team and say, okay, you get to manage it. And we're able to, one of the things we do is we're able to insert ourselves in like 20 different stages of the application's lifecycle. So whether it's auto scaling or there's a performance issue or, hey, I need to do a patch. Now the IT ops team is using the same platform to update and maintain the app, right? So the whole like infrastructure, some of the challenges is IT never knows what's running on that.
Right.
We give them visibility. They know exactly what app is running. They're able to actually manage apps, not just the infrastructure.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Scott. It was great talking to you.